saw the pictures and was out, huh?
Yeah, he got scared.
I'm pretty scary.
Yeah.
I think that's funny. People are like, how scared are you? We all. Oh, why did I get the two? Yeah. We're talking to someone. How's everybody doing? Are you in there? All right. No, you're not even in there. It's, I know. I think a lot of people are there. There's only 9 classes left. Almost there. 9's a lot, but it's not. All right. Let's see what do I got here. So, before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of slides. Ready? I love last time we did all the presentations, but a couple of things that weren't talked about, and those are things I want to mention before we move on to chapter 12. So I skipped through all the different items that we presented on, but there are a couple of like natural methods that I want to talk just for a few minutes about, and then some of the abortion legislation and stuff that's going on with that. So fertility awareness methods or natural methods are another thing that people use, and these are used a lot to help prevent pregnancy or even get pregnant. Now, these things aren't going to help with STIs. Okay, they're just going to help with getting pregnant or maybe even avoiding getting pregnant. So a lot of people, what they do, and these are like natural family planning strategies, is you can track your menstrual cycle. You can track changes in like cervical mucus, and you can take temperature of the vagina and the cervix, right, in order to get temperature changes. So there's a couple of things that can work to help you notice somebody's menstrual cycle. The rhythm method is when you avoid any kind of sexual intercourse around times of ovulation, right? And we're going to talk about that time again, that fertile window. But when you use this, right, you would avoid any kind of intercourse during times where you're more likely to get pregnant. It drastically reduces your chances of becoming pregnant. There are changes in the cervical mucus of a woman, right, as she goes through different times of the month, right? And so oftentimes people get really good at noticing these changes and knowing when they're ovulating, knowing when a cycle is coming up. You can also track a lot of this with an app. There's a lot of different apps that track menstrual cycles and when you're ovulating and all these different things. And then a very like special thermometer that you can use to track slight changes in your basal body temperature, which can also indicate times where you might be more likely to get pregnant, when you're more likely to be ovulating, and so on. So these are things that people might use as like natural methods. Again, they won't do anything to help you with preventing STIs, but they might work to help you get pregnant or avoid getting pregnant. One other thing, some less than effective methods, withdrawing before ejaculation. Coitus interruptus, isn't that the best name that you can imagine right there? Interrupted sex, right? Latin. I love this. Science confirms the obvious. The pull-out method is not great for avoiding pregnancy. What? Yeah, my brother learned the hard way. I always like for a brother. Like we can all do math, Zach, right? His wife was like, gave birth 5 months later. We're like, oops, right? From he's deeply Mormon, and so that was a big oops for him. But this is not a great way to avoid pregnancy, right? There's a lot of sperm in the seminal fluid that comes out as like a pre-ejaculate, right? And so that is a method that was used for many years. We know now that that is not in any way effective. And that's something that I remember when we did the little intelligence test, like I didn't even need to have you write it down. You all knew that was that's not effective. So just to put that out there. Yeah.
I was Monday and somehow my name is not.
Okay, you can just write over the highlight if you want.
I wrote.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not worth points. It just helps me keep track, but thank you. Can I just write it right over there? Douching, right, is another way that's not effective. Sometimes people think that this will work in order to eliminate any like sperm, right? So after intercourse, doing like douching is a practice to like clean out any sperm that are in there. They're out of range at that point, right? It's not going to be effective. They're too high up into a woman's body in order to work. And this tends to be something that causes a lot of irritation. For most women, it can cause infections and vaginal infections, yeast infections. And then other people, very common belief is that if you have sex while you are lactating or breastfeeding, that you won't get pregnant. Now, your odds are lower because of the hormones that are involved, but it's not at all reliable. So when you are breastfeeding, ovulation is actually suppressed because of the different hormones that are involved, like prolactin and others, but it's not reliable. Ovulation can still sometimes occur, and people can have ovulation occurring at this time without getting a menstrual cycle. So hormones are usually all over the place after childbirth, which we'll talk more about. But of trying to avoid getting pregnant by believing you can have unprotected intercourse while breastfeeding is another very ineffective method. So these are all things that don't tend to work, but they're commonly believed to work. So just to kind of put those out there. Yeah.
After you have like a child, aren't you like more susceptible to getting like pregnant? Like you're more like fertile, right?
A little, right? Your body knows what to do now, right? And so oftentimes people get pregnant much easier the second time. That's very, very common. That the first time it might take some time for your body to become pregnant. Second time, it can often happen the first time you try. It's almost like the body knows now, right? So yeah, that might counter this a little bit as well. Any other thoughts or questions here? Anything else for this one? Right. I always think of that as an insult more than a practice, but yes, a very common practice that people will do for hygiene, but it tends to be more damaging than helpful, right? It can actually cause, as I said, a lot of irritation and issues for women. There are some permanent methods of birth control, right? And the book talks about these really well, but for women, tubal sterilization, and for men, vasectomy, right? These are two things that can be done that are relatively permanent. They can sometimes be reversed, but it's not always guaranteed. But with the idea with both of these, so with a female sterilization or tubal sterilization, what you do is you cut or tie or sever the fallopian tubes. And so what that does is it means the egg can't get from the ovary to the uterus anymore. Right. And so what they often do for like a laparoscopic procedure is they go in and they will sever it and then tie them off. If you don't tie them off, they can actually leak a little bit of a fluid that can sometimes cause infection. So what they will do is they'll sever it and then tie it. And then you no longer can have the egg reach the uterus. So you wouldn't be able to get pregnant naturally anymore, though you still could in theory through assisted reproductive methods, which we'll talk about in chapter 12. Male sterilization is when you cauterize, tie off the vas deferens. The vas deferens are the sperm carrying tube. It's the one that introduces the sperm into the seminal fluid right before ejaculation. So when a man has a vasectomy, they still will ejaculate like a milky white seminal fluid. It doesn't contain sperm though, right? The sperm are unable to enter into that fluid because the vas deferens has been severed. And so they'll still like have an ejaculation, they still have that fluid, but it has no sperm in it, right? And so this is something that sometimes can be reversed, and those sperm are just broken down by the body, and they just keep going through the process of being created, that spermatogenesis, but they don't ejaculate them anymore, right? And so both of these are relatively permanent surgical methods that can keep somebody from being able to be fertile. And again, sometimes they can be reversed, but it's not always perfect. And so kind of a more intense decision to make because they do have like a surgical element to them. Anything here? Yeah.
If you get the like female sterilization, will you still get a period or?
Yeah, right. So you still have the same like hormones coursing through your system, but the only thing that changes is the egg can no longer reach the uterus. And so it'll still be released every month, but it can't get there in order for like implantation and fertilization to occur. Okay. Yeah.
Side effects of this?
Not necessarily other than like the surgery itself. Because what happens is everything stays the same, except the sperm just can't enter into that fluid. And so what you see instead is that sperm, those millions and millions of sperm that are produced every day are just broken down and reabsorbed by the body, right? So there doesn't seem to be any like long-term consequence. What can get tricky is when people try to reverse it, and then they can get scar tissue, which can make it complicated. But for the most part, other than like the surgical side effects, it doesn't tend to be damaging. Yeah.
Which too is simpler. Because I've heard that vasectomy is generally easier.
Yeah.
There's a bigger for men
Mhm.
rather than
Yeah.
That's true.
And it's easier to reverse as well, right? So typically vasectomies are more commonly practiced. It's a short outpatient procedure, right? You go in, they like numb the area with a local anesthetic, you're awake. And they go in with like a small like laparoscopic procedure and do it like a severing and a tying. It's actually really a very brief procedure. So it's practiced more than like a hysterectomy or like a tubal sterilization. Yeah. You're like, no, thank you.
Yeah. Look at all day.
No, I mean, typically no. And sometimes they will sedate you, like if you like have a lot of anxiety or request sedation, but typically you're awake during that procedure. It depends. You're like, I'm not going to watch, right? But they're going, I mean, they go in through your abdomen. So it's not like you're seeing it happen, but they do typically have like it up on a monitor that you could watch. Yeah. If you want to really haunt yourself, Google it. You can watch a video of it on YouTube, I'm sure. You're like, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah. Uh-huh. The C-section. So when we get to our next chapter is pregnancy. And so I'll talk about that. All my children were born by C-section. So yeah, so we'll get there in chapter 12, right? So if I don't answer it, you can ask me. Yeah. Yeah, you can elect for a C-section depending on your insurance, right? Some insurances only cover them if they're medically necessary. But others will cover them no matter what. Like, so with ours, we had twins. When you have twins, you almost always end up with a C-section.
My mom's was, medically necessary.
Yep.
It was an emergency.
Yeah.
She ran into a hospital. She wasn't planning to give birth
Mm-hmm.
and that stopped kicking. And, turns out I needed to have, I needed to be taken out right away.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy.
Yeah.
Really?
Right, you both were just ready to come out.
Yeah,
Okay, let's go. Let's do this. Mhm.
And so was I, but I was a week early, so.
It was like blood loss. I had to get a transfusion.
Yeah, and NICU, right, the neonatal intensive care unit, like sometimes when people are pulled out early, they need to go there for a period of time to finish kind of going through those last formative things if they come out too early.
Volunteering at the Community Memorial Hospital.
Mhm.
And one of the options for volunteers is to like work in the NICU.
Nice, which is daunting, but
Babies.
babies are very tiny in the NICU, right? Very, very, very tiny. One of mine was born at 5 pounds, and that's big for like NICU. And she was so like, I didn't want to change her diaper. It was so small. I said, I've never heard her. Yeah.
Is the bleeding that happens after you get your tubes tied basically like withdrawal bleeding? Because there's no way.
It can be, it's the same like process that everything is happening in the same way. Right, and so you still have that buildup of the lining of the endometrium, right? Preparing for the egg. It's like the body doesn't know that the egg's not going to get there, right? And so you still have that menstrual cycle every month. It's just the egg literally can't get to the uterus. But you still go through the same process, right? The same exact thing, despite there's no chance that it's going to work. There was another hand back there.
Almost 10 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my niece, my partner's sister's daughter, niece. I think it's my niece. No, not Kim, right? Kim's sister, Carrie, has a daughter who was 13 pounds, 2 ounces. That is a big baby. That is like 3 Paisleys right there. 3 fish and dips right there. C-section, yeah, for sure. Yeah, very difficult to give birth to a baby. That's. Yeah, it's possible. It's totally possible. As long as the baby's in the right position, it's totally possible. Yeah.
It's funny because as far as all the talk about birth, it reminds me of one of my favorite facts in biology.
Yeah.
And so you learn about how like with evolution of different types and something aren't necessarily evolution, it's just the way that like the averages are changing.
Mhm.
And something that's happened in recent human history is that because we recently learned more about women's health and pregnancy and all that.
Yeah.
When we had women stop shrinking during pregnancy, the birth weights have gone up by average. So
Yeah.
it used to be like 5 pounds used to be like the average.
Yeah.
Every baby was.
Now it's more like 6 to 8. It's
Yeah.
pretty average.
Now 7 pounds is about the average. And I
Mhm.
think it's even going up.
Yeah.
Because we know more about prenatal health.
Yeah, my oldest was 9 pounds, 2 ounces. My middle, 7 pounds, 15 ounces, and my little 5 pounds, 2 ounces. Right. I remember numbers to remember in my,
So your choice for 7 pounds.
and 5 pounds.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, one ate all the food, right? And now she doesn't eat. So I don't know what happened. I'm not sure what happened. Yeah. Hold on, I can't hear you. Sorry. Yeah, go.
The family baby where they had fraternal twins.
Yeah.
And the mom, she actually delivered them like not by a C-section,
Mhm.
because since they were like fraternal, they have their own like.
They have their own
sacks
sack
that
and
they
everything.
can-
Yeah, mine are fraternal as well. But yeah, I mean, it can happen. You could still give birth. To-
Like of someone like with twins not getting a C-section.
Yeah, it's not super common usually because they have to be in the right position and it's more complicated. You don't want, sometimes it's hard to tell which sac is ruptured and which water has broken, right? And so you have to get them out in a specific timing, but it's definitely possible. Right? Yeah.
Did your wife follow babies?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I did not. No, I did not carry any of them. I missed my chance to eat for 3. At one point. No, I didn't carry anything.
You know what I mean?
I would,
I was a supportive eater. I ate right alongside of her. I'm considerate like that. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm very thoughtful that way. I ate to support and I like massaged her all the time, her poor hips and feet, right? But no, I did not carry our children. I'll tell you that story later today, probably, if not next time. So last thing in this chapter that I want to just highlight, this is something again that has been massive over the last year in our culture, right? In the United States, there's been a lot of legislation about abortion and reproductive rights. I'm sure a lot of you have heard some of that or maybe all of it. But abortion, right, is the term a termination of a pregnancy before the fetus is viable. Now, what do we mean by fetal viability? Fetal viability, a fetus being viable, means that they can survive outside of the uterus on their own. Okay, so, and that varies from state to state, the definition of that. In California, we say that that is after the point of how many weeks? 23 to 24 weeks of gestational age. Now, that's really early. The average amount of time that people carry a baby for pregnancy is 37 to 38 weeks. 23 to 24 weeks is a point where it's the absolute youngest that you could be born and survive. I think the record is 22 weeks, and that baby had massive complications from being born so early. So the idea here is that there are different legislations by state now as it relates to abortion. So abortion, whether it's surgical or the use of a pill, a chemical or medically induced abortion, and what it does is it aborts the pregnancy. So basically it stops the pregnancy from happening. It kills that fetus, depending on the age of the fetus. We say pro-life supporters are the people who support the idea that abortion should be illegal, and pro-choice is supporting that the decision should be up to the person who's carrying that baby. Now, again, this has been incredibly controversial. The whole Roe versus Wade ruling way back in the 1970s was struck down last year in 2022. And it was made where each individual state has the right to decide if abortion is legal or illegal. Now, I have a map of that. And this was in February. So this is a couple months old, but the ones that are green, right, and California would be included in that, it's legal to get an abortion. It's legal to get an abortion if the fetus is not yet viable, so they can't still survive on their own, so before 23 weeks, or if it's necessary to protect the life or health of the mother. Okay, so those are the conditions under which it's legal in the states that are dark green. Light green, it is limited. So maybe they say only in the first trimester, or only if it's medically required or necessary just to literally save the mother's life. The states that are fully banned are in dark red, and the ones that are light red have strict rules about when that can take place or why it can take place. Now, this is something that's constantly coming up right now. Every state deciding what's legal and what's illegal, kind of all going all the way back, 50 years that we had Roe versus Wade in place saying that women had the right to choose And now it's a little bit more complicated, depends on which state you live in, as to what is allowed and what isn't. So just kind of a last thought with that here. Now, obviously, this is after pregnancy has already occurred, right? And it can either be done chemically. Very early on, you can take a chemical that basically causes a woman to have a menstrual cycle. So it sheds that endometrial lining and there's nothing there to keep that egg anymore. Or later, it's done with like a surgical procedure where there's like a vacuum that goes in to remove that fetus. So it depends on what stage of pregnancy you're in. But this is something that's very, very much like a cultural, like controversial issue in our country right now. Just wanted to share. And again, this is February. This has probably changed since then, but that was back in February.
I don't even know the answer to this. With some states that are just completely figured out, like South Carolina.
Yeah.
With gray in both of them.
And so they tend to have gray area, right? Exactly like the color. They don't necessarily have a legislation in place, or they're still voting on it. They're still deciding, there's still legislation out there on it. So typically in those states, it's still practiced, but it's not like as mainstream or available. And so those states that are gray, will probably be changing as time goes on, either making it legal or illegal or with stipulations. Yeah, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of like uncertain states that just don't have, a policy in place yet. Yeah.
Kind of interesting that I was reading about is that because there's so many more bans now, and it's like a lot more restrictive as to where you can get an abortion.
Yeah.
A lot of places are banning it to prevent legal abortions.
Mhm.
But now in this country, a lot more late-term abortions are happening because they have to wait so long, because they have to like leave the state and go somewhere else to get one.
Yeah.
So,
People are having to travel to other states to get them, which pushes it back. a
yeah.
little bit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so there are a lot of like things that are complicated with that for sure. Right. And, you could go to jail depending on what state you're in for doing these. And what it's done is just basically made them go underground again. Like they're still happening in these states. It's just not happening in a medically supervised legal way, which is more dangerous, honestly. Like that's frightening, right? Yeah.
The first day, Texas made it illegal.
Right.
A 18, I think, or 17-year-old girl ended up dying.
Yeah.
trying to get herself.
Yep, people trying to do it on their own, people taking too many like birth control pills or Plan B. There was a case in Florida where a teenage girl, I think she was 14, got pregnant and she took like 9. You remember we were talking about Plan B last time? I think she took 9 packages of Plan B in order to try and force an abortion. And they were like ones that she had gotten that were expired. And I don't remember what happened to her. It wasn't good. So there's a lot of cases of that stuff happening now as this has gone a little bit more underground. Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite depictions of these underground illegal abortions that is kind of a depiction of why we should be able to get them legally and safely is actually from the movie Dirty Dancing, where Penny goes to kind of a sham doctor to get a coat hanger, and I don't remember quite what happened, but she has a medical emergency.
Yeah.
Say bad stuff happens.
Yeah. Right. And that's kind of the old stereotype, right? Like the idea of a coat hanger that you basically like are scrambling at like, what is in the uterus and then like removing those pieces. Like there's a lot of underground things like that happen. And obviously your risk is much higher when it's not being done in a like sanitary, very like formulaic kind of way.
It's an abortion that's not per se,
Mhm.
and she ends up being.
Yeah.
It's, I love how it literally has absolutely nothing to do with like the morality of it.
Yeah.
That's not how they portray it. They portray it as to do with the safety of the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's a great example of something like that in media. And I don't think I've seen like an example of unsafe illegal abortion that isn't, related to you can't get abortions, they're bad
Mm-hmm.
in media.
Yeah, it's a very loaded, complicated, like political topic right now, right? And so just, I wanted to share that with you. And again, I forget which state it was like 3 days ago. There was another state that made it illegal. Yeah, was it Kansas or Mississippi or both? There was a couple of days ago that it went through. Another state went through. Yeah, yeah. It depends, right? So depending on the state, they can either receive a fine of up to, I believe it's $10,000 or serve jail time. And it depends on the state, right? So it's very like state dependent, right? So like I would imagine if you wanted to look at one that was more severe, you could look up like Texas or Florida for consequences. Those two, you can, if anyone wants to Google it, you could find out what the consequence is, right? I love that. Pull them out, do it, right? It's a race, like 6 people. I'm like, let me know when you find out, but yeah.
If a woman gets an abortion, she does to
Life sentence.
25 to 30 years.
Wow.
And
Where's that?
I'm sorry.
Oh, Salvador. Okay.
And a lot of the same have had miscarriages.
Mhm.
And question them, and it doesn't sound
Yeah,
truthful.
that's awful. Yeah.
The doctors or whatever.
And a miscarriage is traumatic enough, let alone to add that on top of it, right? Mhm. I know. Yeah. It's and it does, it varies greatly by country. Did you find out or?
In Texas, it can be as punishable up to life in prison. And it says this, the statute also says that attorney general shall seek a civil penalty of not less than $100,000 plus attorney's fees.
So like I said, Texas and Florida, if you wanted to see the most severe, it'd be one of those.
Right.
I mean, and that's the other issue with this, right, is that not all pregnancies are by choice. And so some of the states have like statutes in place where people can have them if it was a forced like situation, right? Yeah, did you have?
Yeah, it says, I saw that, that it's at least 5 years to a maximum of life.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah.
Like, why do we have to go over something we already learned in songs?
Mhm.
Like even with like any rights that were going on.
Yeah.
We've already seen how bad it can get or like not. It's not good what we did before, where are we going back to how we used to be?
I
And
know.
it felt like, well,
Yeah, I mean, and that's such a big like.
It's crazy that some people would actually argue that things used to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where is it?
That we gotta go back to when things were good. And we had the same thing, remember, we were talking about same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. Right, so recently, and back in January, right, they passed that Marriage Equity Act to prevent interracial marriages from being banned, right? I mean, we've had that been legal for so many years, right? So not only like same-sex marriages, but interracial marriages. So we've had some interesting backward stuff, and so it's, and like I'm trying to stay very neutral because I don't know what your opinion is on it, but like we have gone very, I mean, this is 50 years ago that women had this right and it was eliminated. A lot of backlash, right? But a lot of states very much on board with this, right? So it's tricky. Our country is very split, right? And you see that politically all the time, right? Yeah.
So, like the deep red states like Texas, you still have to, or what are the like laws on like if it's medically necessary, like the woman's going to die.
I think they would rather the woman die than have the abortion in a few of the states. Yeah. Right. I know. Yeah, I know. I was just in Texas and it was exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
I walked into a Walmart in Texas and it went quiet. I was all Walmart. Walmart. Like why not? People in front of me, and they all went quiet and stared at me, and I was like.
it's like she's a celebrity.
Sorry.
Legend, because like I learned this, like I was pro Catholic before,
I'm supposed to give up my life for this baby. You were supposed to like make this baby no matter what, like you were supposed to die for this, baby, no matter what, even if it's gonna kill.
Well, even birth control. Even birth control methods, this is how far it can go, right? In Colorado, this was 11 years ago. They were trying to pass a law that masturbation should be illegal. Because, for men.
Yeah.
Because you're literally discarding unborn babies.
That is.
300 million of them or more. So, I mean, this can really evolve. That like God has a plan for the family, right? And so religion and politics get very intertwined when we get to stuff like abortion, when does life begin, which is a big moral ethical question, or this gets complicated. I'm not letting the lawyer with it.
I just wanted to add that because just like you said, with your beliefs, like you them, like in that instance, you're supposed to choose the mother's life over the life. But it's just, like, the conflict is so interesting. Like, are you gonna say freedom of religion? Yeah,
Right.
so like, I don't know, that's just super interesting.
Yeah.
Like, why is?
Every religion is different in the beliefs that they have. Every person is different. Like when my partner was carrying her children, she's like, if you have to choose between me and the babies, choose the babies. And I was like, hell no,
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Most of the states that are like that ban abortion also don't have like comprehensive sex education.
Yeah.
Or access to birth control.
Yeah.
Their teen pregnancy and pregnancy death rates in all the states where it's legal. They just don't want to put in any of the extra effort.
Yeah.
It takes to like ensure people's safety.
Yeah, and then we add the elements of like not protecting children once they are born, but wanting to protect them.
Yeah, like the system, they just turned it's a whole like.
It's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess, yeah.
I guess that what you're saying, a lot of people in some states even say that any form of birth control is sex.
Yeah, there are some states
But
that.
that doesn't make sense to me because having sex outside of this window of acceptance
Yeah.
is a form of birth control. So
True.
you just shouldn't have sex at all.
Right, so none of us should just have sex when it's good, right?
Yes.
I mean, we won't have any more children, but we'll be good. I know, and there's a lot of inconsistencies, right? There's a lot of contradictions, and that's where a lot of like the fights come in is like, you know, it's case by case sometimes, but some states aren't willing to consider case by case, and it gets really complicated. It really does, yeah.
As far as like religion and stuff, and like the Judaism thing, like the ideology is the same as you're saying, like, you know, the mom's life is more important as she knows her babies.
Sure.
She's already established, right? But it's also interesting that if you do miscarry, and the baby's already had a heartbeat, in Judaism, you're supposed to bury it and you're actually supposed to like treat it as if it was already born.
Yeah, different religions with different beliefs about when life begins, what you do with that life, right? My partner literally said she would come back from the grave and kill me if I chose her over the children. I was like, I'd like to see you try, but then I was scared. But luckily it didn't happen. I'm like, she probably would find a way. Yeah. Always. So there's a bunch of like, even the plan B and like some of the morning after kind of pills are probably the most controversial of the birth control methods for that reason. Yeah.
It's like, I know you can't do that.
Yeah.
It's surprising.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me at all. Right? Yeah.
I lived in Florida for a while.
Hmm.
And like, I think the stop.
Yeah. Now, some states, it's really difficult to obtain these things, right? So just be aware that it's complicated, right? It sounds like you all are, you know, and that it really does depend on what state you are in. California is one of the like more, more liberal states, right? So in California, it is legal, but very close by to us, it's not. So a lot of people do come to states where it's illegal in order to do these procedures. So now that we've talked about preventing pregnancy, we get to talk about pregnancy itself, right? Probably one of my favorite chapters here. So when we're looking at this chapter, this bigger, we'll talk a little bit about becoming pregnant. How do we become pregnant? Right? Some fertility and assisted reproductive methods, the experience of pregnancy, childbirth, and a little bit of after childbirth. So we'll talk about all of that. Aren't those like the happiest looking sperm you've ever seen? Like, I think they look so happy. So I have a little video I want to play for you that goes through the process of conception and how that occurs, just to kind of put that in perspective as we're talking about this. They make it like an epic story, like the epic story of 300 million sperm and the one that makes it. It's very like dramatic, but I think it's really helpful to see as we're talking about this idea of how we become pregnant. So I'm going to play this for you and you can laugh. I've never felt so sad for sperm as I felt after watching this. Like, I felt bad for the sperm that died on the journey. I'll be curious to see if you feel that way. I was like, oh my gosh, those poor millions of sperm. Like, I actually like felt sad for them a little bit. We'll see if you feel the same way. It might have just been me. But, I had like sperm sympathy. All right, here we go. I'll play this for you. So helpful, right? I love the way that they are like kind of guiding you through each step of that, even though it is dramatic and it has. But that is how pregnancy, right, occurs, right? So it's not when sperm and egg meet. Pregnancy hasn't happened yet. It has to implant into the uterine wall in order for pregnancy to technically happen. So there are a lot of steps involved in becoming pregnant. Now, I put this up here. Remember when we talked about the menstrual cycle? Right? There are typically 28 days in the menstrual cycle, depending on the woman and depending on the cycle. Remember that right around day 14 or so is when a woman tends to ovulate, right? And this is marked by a big surge in luteinizing hormone, that big hormonal release. You can test for that using a variety of different like methods. But when people, after they ovulate, we have what's called the fertile window, right? And we can use this to avoid getting pregnant, as we talked about earlier, or we can use it to avoid or to help us get pregnant. So what a lot of couples would do if they're trying to get pregnant is they won't match or like track their menstrual cycles. And then right when ovulation is occurring, the days following that is when you have the highest chance of becoming pregnant. Why would that be? Why is it your highest chance right then? Any guesses? Yeah. Yeah, the egg is traveling down the fallopian tube, right? There's an egg there. If you have intercourse here, there's no egg. Intercourse here, the egg is already like too far, right? It's not in the fallopian tube anymore. So there's actually kind of a narrow window in which you are likely to get pregnant. The rest of the month, it's much, much lower likelihood. So we have a single sperm cell from a male, right, penetrating the outer coating of an egg, the reproductive cell of women, right? And they fuse together to create a fertilized cell, as you saw in the video, right? And once that single sperm cell goes in, it actually shuts the egg down. There's like a chemical change that happens, as they showed you. And so no other sperm can enter. So of the 300 million sperm, right, that enter during intercourse or during any kind of like assisted reproductive like procedure, one is going to make it, right? Again, against all odds, right? I love that. It's so dramatic. But you still aren't pregnant as of right now. That egg has to travel down, right, the fallopian tube and implant into the uterine wall. And at that point, a person is pregnant. Yeah.
So then the first like 5 to 6 days, that's like beginning of the period, right?
For,
Like,
oh yeah, so this would be when you're actually having the menstrual
okay.
cycle. This is the proliferative phase where the lining is building, and then the luteal phase here, right? As we talked about before. Yep. So obviously, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So in that sense, then when you take like morning after, so that is like if you have an egg that already fertilized and it just doesn't really not attach.
So you shed the lining of the uterus, so there's nothing for it to attach.
Okay,
So it basically forces a period,
okay,
right? And so wherever somebody is at in that same cycle, it will force them to have a menstrual cycle. So there's no way that egg can actually implant.
Okay.
That's very cool. Okay. So you can obviously become pregnant through like intercourse between a man and a woman, right? Like intercourse leading to pregnancy. But a lot of couples, even heterosexual couples, need help due to infertility struggles. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about assisted reproduction before we talk about more about pregnancy. Infertility is a big issue in our culture, right? It's becoming more and more common, not only among couples who maybe need help because they're missing like an ingredient of sorts, but couples who have everything in place are still often struggling to get pregnant. So infertility technically is the inability to conceive or become pregnant after 1 year of regular sexual intercourse without the use or form of like any kind of birth control. So a couple that's been actively trying for a year, right? Maybe they've even been monitoring this and trying that way, and haven't been able to get pregnant. Now, that could be, again, it's typically here we're talking about a heterosexual couple, but a lot of like gay or lesbian or bisexual couples, or even transgender couples, right, might use assisted reproductive methods to help them get pregnant, right? It's very common, and there's a lot of different options that we'll talk about. Yeah. It can be either. Right. I saw TikTok the other day. What did they call it? They called it something, and it was so funny. I'll have to look it up. It made me laugh. But it's usually LGBT. The book said GLBT, so I just included it. What was that? Yeah, legitimiqua or something, right? Did you see that? And she's like, I would like forever to be known as legitimiqua. I love that. Me too. Right? It's hilarious. So you saw that too. Yeah, I thought it was pretty funny. It's just like, it sounds so like fancy, so bougie, right? So there's a lot of different reasons that people might be infertile, right? Very simple one, menstrual cycle irregularity, right? If somebody doesn't have a regular menstrual cycle, it can be very difficult to know when ovulation is going to occur, right? Easy example of infertility. Now we can control that with birth control pills to make them regular. Right. Another reason people might have poor egg quality or poor egg counts, right? They may not produce enough eggs, or their egg quality is low. Men can have poor sperm count or poor sperm viability and mobility. That's a very common reason for men. There can be problems and infections in the fallopian tubes, which block the egg from being able to get to the uterus, right? There's a lot of reasons that people can struggle with infertility. And so depending on what you're struggling with, we have medications that can help you to produce more than one egg, which is how people end up with multiples, myself included, right? Surgery to repair things or kind of take care of issues that surgically need attention. And then there's a bunch of different procedures. So for us, right, when my wife and I decided to have children, we're obviously missing an ingredient, right? No sperm between us. I visualized it didn't work, right? I tried, but we don't have sperm, right? So we needed infertility like help. We needed assisted reproductive help. And so I know a lot about this because we went through it. It's been 10 years at this point, but these methods are very, very expensive. And so I'll share with you a little bit of like our journey as we went through this. So my partner and I decided to have kids, and we were like, okay, all we need is a sperm donor. Now I have a biological brother who's 3 years younger than me, but I did not want my children being like, my uncle's actually my dad. Yes. And like resenting and hating my brother who I love, right? Like, and so that was never an option. So what we did is we went on to California Cryobank, which is one of your options for an assignment. And we looked up sperm donors. And so my partner has always wanted to carry, very like, she's feminine. Like I've never wanted to carry. It's completely against my gender identity. And so we looked for sperm donors to represent me, similar height, weight, ethnicity, eye color, hair color, right? As physically close to me as possible. And it was like a bonus if they had similar interests, right? You could see celebrity lookalike photos. There was one that was Tom Brady, and I was like, yes, that one. My partner was like, it's not actually his sperm. I'm like, like how crazy was that? So we went through this whole thing. We even made a PowerPoint presentation because we're both teachers. And we presented it to all our family. Everyone voted. We got childhood like lookalike photos and everything. And so we went through 3 rounds of what used to be called artificial insemination, but it's now called intrauterine insemination, IUI, where basically what they do is they take the sperm and they introduce it into the vaginal tract when a woman is ovulating. So we skip like the idea of like sperm being introduced through intercourse, but it's introduced with a catheter, right, at the time when ovulation is occurring. So you take ultrasounds to monitor that. And we even went one step further and took fertility drugs so that she would have more than one egg present to try and inseminate. Okay, so we took drugs and did this. It sounded bad. We took drugs together. She took fertility drugs. We introduced the sperm to represent me at the time of her ovulation. Now, one round of intrauterine insemination or artificial insemination costs about $3,000. One round, okay? We did 3. Okay, so we did 3 rounds. That doesn't include the hormones if you take drugs, fertility drugs, I should clarify. So we did 3 rounds of artificial insemination or IUI. Didn't get pregnant, right? We went to a specialist in Thousand Oaks. We have one of the top 10 fertility doctors in the world in Thousand Oaks, which is really cool. Awesome guy, right? Super like changed our lives, obviously drastically. So we went to him and he was like, there's might be something going on. Let's run some tests. Turned out my partner's fallopian tubes were completely blocked. Artificial insemination, IUI was never going to work. No matter what, they were never going to meet. So she had surgery, had her fallopian tubes tied off, and basically surgically like cauterized and removed. Not my favorite day of life. It was so scary, right? But she had surgery and had that done. And then IUI was no longer an option anymore because no matter what we do, if we introduce sperm, it's not going to get there. As a side note, stereotype of IUI. Anyone, what's the stereotype of artificial insemination? What does it look like? Petri dish, turkey baster. My partner was like, bring this back if you want Thanksgiving dinner, right? Turkey baster. Now look at the size of this thing. This is an average turkey baster, right? Do you remember how large a typical male ejaculate is? Oh, a teaspoon. That's gonna fall right out of this, right? They don't use turkey baster. This isn't stereotype, like 2 lesbians at home with a turkey baster. So it would be literally like the tip of this, right? So they use it like a catheter, a very small catheter. But just as a funny like side note, I stole her turkey baster for that. I've remembered to take it back. So we did 3 rounds of IUI, nothing. Surgery, and now we had to move to the next thing, right? Because IUI was never going to work anymore. We moved to IVF. In vitro fertilization. So in vitro fertilization, much more invasive. What a woman does is they inject themselves in the stomach and in the hips, like in the abdomen region, with a bunch of different hormones. You grow a bunch of eggs. They surgically remove each egg with a long needle gone through the vaginal canal. Right? That sounds awful, right? You're asleep, you're completely put out for this. And then what they do is they take the sperm and they introduce the sperm and eggs together in a petri dish, right? In a little like dish. That's where it comes from. And then once they fertilized each other, you then put that egg back in to the uterus directly. So you skip a bunch of steps, right? IVF, very expensive. On average, 1 round of IVF. You can take a deep sigh here. $12,000.
And that's on average?
On average. That doesn't include the hormones, which are another 3 to 4, right? So we did 3 rounds of IUI, and then we did 2 rounds of IVF. Still did not get pregnant. You're adding this up. My kids were expensive, right? Sometimes I'm like, you were expensive, right? Right. So we did this where we did 2 rounds of IVF, and at that point, our doctor here in Thousand Oaks, it's like, you know, we were ready to give up. Honestly, at this point, it had been 14 months, a lot of tears, my partner feeling like she was never going to get pregnant, surgery, like all sorts of stuff, right? And so at this point, my partner was like, forget it, let's adopt. And our doctor said, give me 1 more shot, I'll pay for it, which was phenomenal. I mean, right, $12,000. He said, I'll pay for it, but I have 1 caveat. And I was like, oh, what's this going to be? He looks at me and he's like, have you ever thought of carrying, like, because it wasn't working with my partner. And I was like, oh, no, like, not only would that break me, but it would break our relationship. No, he's like, no, I don't need you to carry, but what if we use your eggs? And I was like, oh, okay. And we talked about it, right? And so I went through a round of IVF, which was crazy. I like cried all the time. All the hormones. I just cry for no reason. I started liking salads. It was so strange. My partner was like, you've never been the same. I know, like I went from, we go to a restaurant, instead of French fries, I'd order a salad. And she's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, it's the hormones. So I went through a round of IVF. Turned out I was like a super egg. I mean, I didn't tell. My partner at the time we did IVF would grow like 7, 8 eggs that they would remove. I grew 48.
Oh, yes.
Yep. And so I grew 48 eggs. They surgically removed all 48 of them, one needle at a time. I did what's called hyperstimulating. I was sick for a week afterward. And then really wild. So we took one of the eggs that was mine with a sperm donor to represent my partner. So we went through and picked everything to represent her. And we took one of her eggs with a sperm donor to represent me. Both of them went in and we got cut. Okay. So we had twins for 2 days. And then I don't know, it was there and then it was gone. She ate her twin. That's what we joked. But we ended up with one child, right? And that one child, I mean, she looks just like me, right? Like, do you remember the presentation I showed you?
Really great then.
I know. Right, so if you look at our family photo, right? I think the other one's a little better. Okay, so if you look at this, Emma looks just like my partner Leah,
Yes.
right? Spitting image. Kaya looks so much like me. Okay, so I'm not going to show you the childhood picture, but I used to have long curly hair and it looked just like hers, right? And Paisley looks a lot like Kaya. People will be like, are they twins? I'm like, she's 8 and she's 10. No? The height difference, one has curly hair, one doesn't. But I mean, we're never going to test. Doesn't matter. I mean, I know. You know how I know whose is whose? Emma doesn't like cake. Emma hates sweets. Kaya and Paisley like cake. Done. I know the answer. So we'll never test, but like it's pretty obvious. So we ended up with Kaya. We ended up with one, and then when we went to have our twins, it was like bottom bargain basement deal of the year. Like Kaya cost us $48,000 to have. We wanted her badly. 48 grand, right? That's a lot of money. And she's an amazing, she's worth every penny, right? Her sisters, I don't know. The twins, Emma and Paisley, only cost us $4,000 because we had all these eggs saved from the previous procedure. We put in 3, 2 of mine, 1 of Leah's, my partner, and we ended up with twins. Pretty obvious. They are so unique. They are twins, but they are not genetically related. That would be an amazing psychological study. It's never going to happen, but it'd be interesting. But they look nothing alike. They are nothing alike, but they're twins. Right? They were born together. And they only cost $4 grand. What a deal, right? First time too, like you were asking about sometimes the second time. So my twins, we got pregnant like that. We're like, oh, we should start because it took us 2 years to get pregnant with Kaya. We got pregnant on the first time with them. So they're under 2 years apart. I know, off the clearance rack. Seriously, I overpaid. No, I'm just kidding. I love them. Yeah.
Confused about is the fact that you said that in IVF they grow.
Okay, so
because from my understanding,
no, I'm glad you asked.
it's like that's the only time that women ever grow eggs is in utero.
Right. So they mature, yeah. So maybe wrong word there. So what they do is you're injecting yourself with hormones to cause more eggs to mature. So rather than 1 egg maturing per month, as you typically would, I had 48 mature, as I said, and my partner typically had like 6 or 7. And then what they do is they remove those mature eggs, and in a little lab dish, they introduce the sperm and the eggs, and some of them are going to, fertilize and some aren't. And so then they take the ones that are fertilized, they rate them, they grade them. Like I had all A's, right? No, I'm just kidding. And so then they take the best ones and that's what they then implant into the uterine. So not so much grow as like mature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so some of these, like the fertility drugs, what they do is they cause more than one to be released. And that's how people end up with twins or triplets or octuplets, right? Mhm.
So obviously they're really
Yeah.
excited about
Right. And our doctor actually made us agree that because we put in 3, and he's like, if you end up with triplets, we are going to need to chemically reduce to 2. So a chemical abortion to reduce to 2. He made us agree to that. I was like, I don't want to put in 2. We're gonna end up with twins. We're gonna end up with twins. We're gonna end up with twins. We ended up with twins. But we ended up with them right off the bat.
So, and like, I don't know if they did, so your partner had her tubes tied,
Yeah.
and she's still able to trade pregnancy,
Mhm.
the hormones and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
So your fallopian tubes, all they do is they carry the egg from the ovaries to the uterus. So we were never going to get pregnant by introducing sperm and letting them meet naturally. So IVF skips that step. And so you put a fertilized egg, they've already met, right? The
Okay.
egg and sperm have already hung out, met, fertilized,
Okay.
everything, right? And you put that up into the cervix, all it has to do at that point is implant into the
Okay,
uterine.
but
wall.
the tube being kind of.
Nope, nope. If we hadn't surgically tied the tubes, they leak chemicals and hormones that can actually interfere with pregnancy.
Oh.
And so that was part of the reason why she had to have the surgery to prevent that from happening.
Got it.
Since it's not your wife's egg, is there like a chance that your body would like reject it as like a foreign body?
It could, but it's really unlikely because it's so small. It's really unlikely. I mean, in theory, yeah, but luckily it didn't. So I'll answer your question. I have to stop there, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about like when did you guys get to like choose the genders? Because can't
No,
do that?
you can now. So when at the time we could have paid, gosh, it was like $9,000 to genetically test. And honestly, at that point, we did not care. Like I wanted I didn't end up with any boys, but I was like, a boy would be great, a girl would be great. But now you can very much test. Now they will tell you not only the grade, but the sex of that egg, that fertilized egg, and you can pick.
Yeah.
And the future is probably even beyond that. Very like Gattaca-like, where you can like test elements of the kids too.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so I'm gonna stop there because I have to run something. We'll pick up here and we'll keep going next time. So have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget the second assignment is due tonight, okay? Make sure you finish that and turn that in, and I will see you on Monday.